Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this young lady back. It's Smythe Hill. She is, of course, with millionvoices.org. You see her on Newsmax all the time. Smythe.com as well. Kay, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm doing good, Joe. I'm doing good. How are you?
Very well. So, big news day. We had a person of interest. We don't even say suspect anymore in the shooting death of the UHC CEO in New York, and they're blaming the gun for some reason. The ghost gun did it. Somehow, the ghost gun did it. And I'm thinking, that's not really. There had to be somebody holding the gun that did it. But we'll see if this is the guy. From what we can tell by the profile pictures we're seeing and by what they're saying, it looks a lot like the guy that we saw in those pictures. So we'll follow that. The bigger story that actually broke before then was Daniel Penny, the Marine, who restrained a guy that was basically attacking a bunch of people on a subway. He's been found not guilty. And before I tell you how I feel about that, where are you on that?
I put myself in the position of the person on the subway car.
Right.
If a guy comes in acting irrational, threatening to kill everyone.
Yes.
It's New York, same sort of vibe in London. We were bombed in the 7/7 bombings in London.
Right.
It's not the kind of thing that anyone should have to deal with, but it is a sad reality when you don't kind of take care of mental illness, like that becomes criminal level mental illness. So you have someone that walks into a subway car threatening to kill everyone. I'm with the guy who stands up and says, we're not dealing with that today. Sorry. Yeah. I'm for the soldier. I'm always going to be for the soldier. I'm always going to be for the real man in that situation. I think that there are a million different ways that none of this had to happen. But given everything, without any kind of hypotheticals, ifs, ands, or buts, no, it was always Daniel Penny. How could you not? Yeah. I don't know. That's my read anyway.
Have you ridden the subway in New York?
Yes.
It's not a fun thing. It's not safe. It was when we were there, and I think I've given you the story before, but for those watching and listening who haven't heard it, we were there in like 1998. We visited the World Trade Center before it was attacked, obviously. Majestic. It was incredible. And then we jumped on, I think it was the 7 train. That might have been the same train that Daniel Penny was on. And as we're sitting there, I believe Sam and CJ were little, and we didn't have Gabby yet. And it was my wife and I, along with our kids. I think we had one of them was in a stroller or something. And a group of young black men got on the train, which is fine. I'll travel with young black men. Doesn't bother me. But they all made an announcement. We have an announcement for you. We're going to do a performance. Then you're going to give us all your money. They announced that to the train. And we went, what? Yeah, you're going to support our dance team by buying the uniforms, so get your money ready. And they weren't playing around. They're going to rob the entire train. And then luckily, some guy wearing like a stained T-shirt walked up and whispered something in the ear of the guy who was clearly the leader. And at the next stop, they all said, okay, we got to go. And they left. Didn't steal anything, didn't do anything. It turned out he was an undercover cop. Mm-hmm. So back then, you felt safer. Now, the city and the governor have taken the undercover system away from the subway. People are not safe in the subway. People are being pushed on the tracks of the subway, and mental illness is running rampant. So when a guy gets on the train, the subway in New York, or the tube, any sort of mass transit in a huge city, and makes an announcement that you're all going to die, you take him seriously. Yeah. I think that you take him seriously. And but for Daniel Penny, we don't know what might have happened. And what bothers me about how we disseminate information in this country, and I want your thoughts on this. If you had never heard of Jordan Neely before, and you only watched news coverage, who did you think he was? Do you know?
Well, again,
the news coverage showed the video over and over and over of this guy. What was he doing?
Was it he's like the singer dancer type?
He was a Michael Jackson impersonator. That's all we know. This poor guy trying to make a living, busking out there by the subway, dancing like Michael Jackson, was killed by a mean white man. That's the story that we got. Okay, that video is all from 10 years earlier. Mm-hmm. He had not been doing that. He wasn't the Michael Jackson impersonator that was snuffed out on the train. He was the guy that not only said he was going to kill people, he was in their faces screaming at them. So I want Daniel Penny. I'm with you. I want Daniel Penny, but I wanted those who are in Middle America watching, and I love Middle America. It's not a denigration. I want you to understand that when somebody gets on the train and says that, something bad is going to happen.
Well, it's the same, like I think if someone walked into a shopping mall, into a hotel lobby and said the same thing, made the same kind of declaration, yeah, you're not stuck in that environment in the same kind of way, like you're trapped on a train or you're
Right.
trapped on a subway car or a bus or whatever it may be. But there's that palpable fear where you realize, like, oh, okay, I might be about to die, or if not, I'm probably going to experience or witness probably the worst trauma I'm ever going to witness.
Right.
And yeah, you want the guy to stand up and say, absolutely not. This is not going to happen today. Like, I don't know. Obviously, as a woman, it's very different for me. I avoid all of these major cities. I mean, I completely freaked out one time. We went into Raleigh in North Carolina, and I lived in California, so I'm sort of used to seeing mental illness mixed with, I don't know, I don't know if it's like an intuition thing. I don't know if this is something that other people pick up on, particularly women listening. I've noticed this again in a lot of my veteran friends.
Right.
There's something behind the eyes that isn't quite right when you look at someone and you know that their intent is to do something bad. So
Yes.
I've seen it plenty after living in California, but the first time I really saw it here in Raleigh, I was about to cross the street with my now husband and my parents. And I sort of grabbed my husband's arm and like dragged him. And he was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I was like, we're going to cross this way. And so we crossed a slightly different way to
Right.
get into this restaurant. And we sat and we watched. And I remember John, he sort of like knows not to really question me on that stuff because he sees me every day make these weird predictions that seem to come right.
Right.
But my parents, not so much. They're like, I'll calm down. Like, everything's going to be fine. Not 5 minutes later, this man who had essentially been sitting on the crosswalk with that look in his eye, the sort of like, they move in a certain way that doesn't really seem almost like human in some ways. It's devastating to see because you know that there's a human soul trapped inside of that body that needs to come out. But like when that evil takes over, whether it's in the form of addiction, whether it's in the form of mental illness, like you have to stand in and protect yourself from that as much as, it might pain you and you want to go out there and help that person. You have to protect yourself first.
Right.
And so not 5 minutes after we get into this restaurant, we're sitting there looking out the window and this guy goes after two girls just straight down the middle of the street, probably 100 people around, if not more. And I was like, okay, yeah, see, we listen to me now. That's the new rule. Bless
Right.
your naivety. But we have systems, or we used to have systems in the UK. I don't know if they're there anymore. I haven't been back there in quite a while. I have very little interest in going, actually. It sounds awful at the moment, not just the weather, but the politics has just gone completely off the
Looks
walls
horrible,
again.
yeah.
Oh, just terrible. But out here in the States, we don't have mental health care anymore in the state. Like we talk about it all the time, right? Oh, you've got your therapist. Oh my gosh, do you go and see your therapist every day? And you've been going to them for 10 years to deal with the same problem. You don't have a therapist. You have someone you pay to complain to. You're not doing the work. Therapy is not supposed to be a lifelong thing. It's supposed to be like any other kind of medical intervention where you go in, you fix it, you move on. Some people have a lot of stuff, whatever. Do whatever you want with the therapy. But that is not mental health care in the way that we really, truly need it right now, which is going in and dealing with people who are living on the streets, who are deep into their, everyone I've spoken to says it's 100% addiction rates, or at least some kind of drug and or alcohol abuse rates amongst homeless populations across the United States. I don't think anything can ever be 100%, but I think it's pretty much,
It's pretty high. And the bottom line is we're not helping anybody. We're spending all of this money to build roads and pay pensions in Ukraine, yet we've got a mental health issue here in the country that ended up with this guy dead. Now, had the mental health, community helped this guy when he needed help, maybe that doesn't happen that day. And now the guy's family is suing Daniel Penny for millions of dollars for punitive damages, when at the end of the day, this guy was a person who needed the asylum to be open. He was a person that needed that mental help to be there. When we closed the asylums and let people go to Venice Beach and do drugs and self-pleasure in front of everybody in public, that's when we should have said, oh, maybe we should open these facilities again. This guy is dead because he had mental health history, a criminal history, and he threatened a bunch of innocent people on a train trying to go to work. That's why he's dead. And any other excuse is just trying to profiteer off of it. You hear BLM. This BLM idiot in New York is now saying we should all become vigilantes now. He's literally saying out loud, go and kill a white person today.
I mean, it's just absolutely revolting. And I just want to go back to what you mentioned about California and the fact that we did close the asylums. I think that was really one of the first places to really get hit because the rest of America, I've said this so many times before on the show, Joe, like the rest of America just basically put it's criminally insane and it's addicted on buses and just sent them all to California because that's the way that the Soros-backed DAs wrote the policies, essentially to be like, oh yeah, no, Black Lives Matter, unless you're mentally ill, then we're going to let you die of your addiction on the street, definitely prematurely. But you know what? We're going to make so much money off of you first. We're going to say we care about you. We're going to post like the little black squares and we're going to go start like all of these homeless foundations, blah, 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 that are going to build affordable housing that, they must be invisible. Joe, someone in California has created the invisible house and it's the only type of affordable housing. And you know what the amazing thing about it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It was all a lie. It was one of the greatest scams in modern American history, up there with COVID. It is just absolutely horrific to me that all of these different organizations, not only backed by the government, but backed by just the most sinister individuals across this country, thought, you know what, let's tell everyone we're going to help people with mental illness, but let's actually just indulge them to the point where they're stuck on the street so we can keep making our money, so we can get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and go and buy our mansions in Topanga.
Well, on a larger scale, though,
thousands are dead.
You educated me on this. On a larger scale, it's not hundreds of thousands; it's billions. I think California has squandered $25 billion, and Gavin Dumbass wants more. He wants more billions to make it worse. The homeless situation in California that you educated me about years ago has gotten exponentially worse with every dollar they spend. Explain to me how that happens. I can't figure it out.
So basically back in the mid sort of 20 teens, all of these different policies come out that make sleeping on the sidewalk legal, possessing and owning a certain amount of drugs, different things basically linked to what constitutes a violent crime. A lot of those were sort of brought down to be misdemeanors. And so what you see is a huge criminal element. Within addiction, most of the substances that people are addicted to are illicit or they're gotten through illicit means. And so California was just sort of this ground zero, really, where there were all the policies in place that would allow you to be homeless, that would allow you to be mentally ill, that would allow you to commit crimes to keep you in the position where you wake up in the morning, you go and commit like a little crime, whether it's you go rob someone, you rob a store, whatever it is, you get your little bit of money, you go buy your crack, you go buy your meth, you go buy your heroin, most of which, if not all of which, is now laced with fentanyl. We don't even have time to get into the cartel aspect of this, but that is a whole other sort of sub-subject or subplot in this horrific example of human decline. And so California really became this sort of like normalized hotbed for crime. So the rest of America starts saying, well, we're sick of seeing these same teenagers robbing the pharmacy or robbing Walmart. We're just going to start busing them to California so we don't have to deal with them anymore. They're not going to die out there from, cold, harsh climates. They're going to be able to die slowly or quite quickly on the street of this mental illness that is leading them to this crime. And then they're not going to be our problem anymore. Well, then we opened the borders. And so the country was absolutely flooded with gangs and criminals who, okay, they don't make the same amount of money off drugs as they do in trafficking humans, but they still bring in more drugs. Like there was enough fentanyl, I think, brought in the first like couple of months not even brought in, just what was captured by the DEA to kill like everyone in America, like a couple of times over. I don't know if it was the first couple of months, but the numbers are just absolutely staggering. And so America then became sort of overwhelmed with all of these young people who, from the tail end of the opioid crisis, they've watched their parents, and many themselves were prescribed, what was that stuff the Sackler family, Purdue Pharma gave everyone, OxyContin, the sort of OxyContin crisis, coupled with this sort of glamorization in mental health. All of these different kind of terrifying sub-factors and metrics that sort of combine to create what is this macro mental health decline that in many blue cities now are sort of replicating these policies of California, because all the policies are paid for by the same guy, right? It all goes back to the George Soros Foundation and these sort of far leftists who realize that there is a lot of money to be made off of human decline. In the same way there's a lot of money to be made off war, you can make a lot of money if you run a nonprofit that claims it's going to build
taken me to
homes.
Another place. You've taken me to another place, because you're right. We are funding and financing the continuation of the problem. It's like, as you said, the never-ending wars. It's like the pharmaceutical companies not wanting to solve your problem. The doctor wants to heal you. The pharmaceutical company wants you to be a customer for life. That's the difference here. We have to reform that. Kay, how would we reform that? I have no idea.
I think it actually really starts with the Maha movement. And I gotta say, Joe, like pretty much all the women I know voted for Donald Trump because they were really voting for RFK Jr. You know, when you put a man
because they've seen him working out. Because they've seen him working out. Bunch of pigs.
Yeah, he is a bit of a snack, but a little bit of a silver fox, whatever. That was a mild factor in it. But it really does come down to health. Like, what is the most important thing any of us own? It is our health. Like, it's way more important than money. It's the most important thing to all of us. And so when you have someone standing up saying, actually, like these vaccine schedules, they're absolutely insane. They don't make any sense. And it's clearly from a place of corporate greed. Actually, all of this crazy stuff we're putting in our food, I mean, I heard someone the other day, I think it was on that show Landman, the new Taylor Sheridan series on Paramount. The main character in it, Billy Bob Thornton, smokes 2 packs of cigarettes a day. And he gets chewed out by one of his friends for being a smoker, and his friend's eating a Pop-Tart or something like, one of these sort of synthetic-y, plasticky American snacks that I certainly didn't grow up with in Europe. He's eating one of these snacks, and Billy Bob Thornton says, you know what, dude, you go to China, you go to Japan, you go to pretty much Italy, everyone's smoking. Everyone is smoking. And lung cancer, not even in the top 10 causes of death. But here in the United States, we've got all of it, and it's all the sugars, it's all the nasties, it's all the really nasty, icky, bitty, plastic toxin crap that we put in our food. And like, Joe, I feel it when I moved to the South, when I moved out of the West Coast where I could, grow a lot of vegetables in my flipping apartment. And I moved to the South, and we have seasons here now. So I don't really get that same kind of freedom. And thanks to inflation, my grocery, oh my God, it's just so expensive. It's absolutely insane. So, you gotta cut costs when you can.
Right.
And I started eating some of this processed food.
Good.
I'm really sick because of it.
I'm with you. I'm frankly out of time. I'm with you when it comes to Maha. I'm with you when it comes to RFK Jr. I'm with you. They're already starting to talk about banning the red dye this and blue dye that. These are all very positive. We didn't get into the other topics, but we got to go. Kay, I appreciate you.
I appreciate you more.
Kay Smythe Hill, go and follow her everywhere. We're back after this. Stay here.